What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. It's Excoundrel AFK Journey here. We're so close to 1,000 subscribers, so if you're watching and you haven't subscribed, I'd really appreciate if you did. I'm going to be creating loads of AFK Journey content in the coming weeks. Hopefully you guys will find it useful.
For those of you that are new to the channel, I'm just going to put this out there. That's not my real voice. My two-year-old had pressed a load of buttons on my mixer. And what's even more hilarious is I went to a work call and talked in the work call and clearly didn't realise until after the work call that I sounded like an idiot. So I'm going to leave in this first portion of the video and my voice sounds ridiculous, and then we'll just go back to normal me.
So, I made a video yesterday, and annoyingly, it was a video that was a little controversial because I didn't pick, like, the 5 best A-tier heroes, which I fully accept. I chose heroes that have been good for me personally in progression. But obviously, you know, if you wanted to pick the 5 best A-tier heroes in the game to just put all of your resources into from the very beginning, like, you'd pick Marily, Odie, Corin, Coco, and... what's the other A-tier hero that I was talking about? Arden. Or even, sorry, Marily, Corin, Odie, Arden, and Damien. Because they were like, they would be your late game comp, right? So totally get it. But I just personally felt like, yes, those heroes are important, you definitely should, but there are a couple of heroes that have helped me at the midway point, which was Antandra and Lucius have both helped me at the midway point of the game. And I didn't invest loads of resources in them to get them to, like, Mythic Plus. I'm just talking about getting them to, like, Legendary or Legendary Plus, which is a little bit less of an investment for an A-tier hero. Anyway, that kind of prompted me to think, do you know what, guys? I'm going to do a proper tier list. I'm going to do a proper tier list that's a bit more segmented. It isn't just S, A, B, C. Because realistically, I don't think in this game you can just do a tier list that's just like S, A, B, C. Pridewin has got a great tier list on their website that separates them out into like early game, mid game, late game, Dream Realm. And that's the way that you should do tier lists in this game. Because every hero has a specific role or a reason to play them in a certain situation, right? So what I'm going to do in this is I'm going to talk about every hero as I do it, hopefully giving some context, and we're going to separate them out into a few different tiers. Strong but needs to be at Mythic Plus. These are heroes that are good, they form part of important late game comps, or they are sort of generally important, but you need to get them to Mythic Plus for them to really have their genuine effect. Generally strong, these are heroes that are good, you don't need them to be at Mythic Plus, they're just generally good, and you will find uses for them throughout your entire stages of the game. Good for progression. These are heroes that are good to help you progress, but are not necessarily going to be good in the late game. Slept on are heroes that I think are underused, or are otherwise good, but maybe just haven't been looked at maybe as much as they could have been. Okay are heroes that are just decent, like, you know, like, okay means, like, a good example is a Leica, for instance. Like, Leica is okay. She has a physical defense reduction at Supreme Plus. She's decent-ish damage. She has kind of some good buffs for her allies, but she basically does stuff that other heroes do better, and often you'll slot Leica into a composition just because you either want the Wilder faction bonus, or you're going to use her in the Wilder Tower, but you're never really going to say, hey, I really want a Leica in my comp. Very rarely are you going to hear people say that. So I'm going to leave Leica in there as an example for okay. Very situational, so I'm going to use another example here just so you kind of know what I'm talking about. Burial. He is a Hypergean character that is extremely situational.
All right, okay, I'll fix the audio issue. So Belial is extremely situational. There are certain comps that Belial works in, which is stuff like the Florabelle comp, where you play mass summons, and obviously Belial summons shadows, so they get the bonus from Florabelle summoned shields, which makes them tankier, and they absorb more hits, so he's definitely got a place in that comp. And in PvP, he can be pretty good situationally if there is an isolated target. Not always are you going to find that there is an isolated target, but you can function quite well with Rainier to force an isolated target. But of course, that's 2 Hypergeans that you need in your team, which, again, to make them really, really competitive, they need to have those ascendancies, and sometimes it's just going to take a very long time to get there. So, you know, I wouldn't be going out and saying to new players, oh god, yeah, put him on your Hypergean wishlist, because for most players who aren't whales, it is going to take a very, very, very long time to get Hypergeans ascended anywhere near where they need to be competitive. So, yeah. Right. the next one is Iron. If you've been following any AFK journey content creator, you'll know that Iron has a very specific composition that works very well for him, but he does need to be Mythic Plus to make it function really well. He's not particularly used before Mythic Plus, but once he is Mythic Plus, combined with a couple of the other units in that comp, becomes a monster and is basically the go-to late game composition for most players. So you should really have this guy on your wish list from the very get-go. In terms of wilders, there aren't actually that many other good wilder S-tier heroes to have on your wish list, so having Iron on there makes sense, and I think it's self-explanatory why he's in the tier that he's in. Cassidy. Cassidy's an interesting one because you don't see her used that much, but she is genuinely quite good at Supreme Plus. She's decent at Mythic Plus, and she's very good if you know alongside Odie, but she's one of the very few characters in the game that can actually reduce magic defense, and she does that at Supreme Plus, which is very, very good for single target Dream Realm boss killing if you're running an Odie comp. The thing is, the reality is, though, that most people are going to run like the Corin, Marilee, Kruger style comps where physical damage is coming through, but otherwise, like, Marilee does have a place at Mythic Plus. I wouldn't, I think what I'd say about Marilee is Cassidy, you keep Cassidy on your Lightbearer wish list because there aren't actually that many good Lightbearer S-tier heroes. Obviously, now that Valor is back into the picture, I would say like Valor and Cassidy, as long as you've got at least a copy of Rowan, is good. Rowan is one of those characters that is just generally strong, and I'll talk about him later. You don't really need Rowan to get to Mythic Plus. He is just very good at one copy. But Cassidy needs to be invested in to have like the real benefits of her kit workout. All right, looking at Arden. Similar story to Iron. He is extremely good at Mythic Plus, but kind of crap before that. What I'd say about Arden is that at Mythic Plus, he basically, once he casts his Dark Cloud, enemies that are caught under Dark Cloud are inflicted by entangling roots, which immobilizes them for 2 seconds and deals damage. On top of that, Dark Cloud will apply lightning strikes to anyone that is CC'd, so he can essentially proc his own Dark Cloud crowd control ability. And then also, on top of that, it works incredibly well with Carolina in terms of Carolina's snowballs affecting people who are affected by CC. So he's just very, very good at Mythic Plus. That's the reason. Dionel, same reason. Extremely good at Mythic Plus. Actually, quite good at Legendary Plus, but extremely good at Mythic Plus. Is another situation with the Hypergeans and Celestials where you're going to need to invest in him a lot. I would not suggest that you aim for Dionel first. I think realistically Rainier is a better investment in terms of his overall utility. But Dionel is obviously pretty good, and it would be a split for me between Dionel and Scarlita once I've got enough copies of Rainier to feel competitive. Cessia, she is just generally strong. I'm still using Cessia, and she's at Supreme Plus. She doesn't get anything special. She doesn't get anything super special from Mythic Plus or Supreme Plus. She gets, a decent upgrade, but you're not sort of getting like a game-changing upgrade with Cessia. Like, Cessia is for her ultimate. You use Cessia because Mr. Carlisle is a bonkers AoE nuke that can then just rip apart the backline, and it can be cast anywhere on the battlefield. It's very strong. She is just a generally strong character. I still use her in pretty much all of my teams because she's just one of the highest ascendancy heroes that I've got. She will eventually be superseded by other heroes that I'm able to get to similar ascendancy levels, and she will eventually be relegated to some PvE progression stuff, maybe some Abyssal Tower stuff, and she'll also maybe be relegated to Graveborn Tower, but all the way up to AFK stage 1125, she was used, and I've used her in practically every composition up until that point. She is just generally a strong character, but she's not like this hyper important late game character. But because you get a free copy of her early on, it's quite nice to have her upgraded just a little bit because it will definitely help your progression. You will breeze through most of the AFK stages by putting a bit of resource into Cessia. The thing about Cessia is that she is a Graveborn hero, and there are 4 pretty good S-tier Graveborn heroes. If I were being super sensible, I would say put Carolina and Thorin on your wish list ASAP. But ultimately, I maxed out Cessia because I just liked her and she was very good for progression. I would not have progressed as quickly as I had done if I had not had Cessia upgraded to Supreme Plus. Damien, really strong, but also needs to be Mythic Plus. he's another one of these healers that becomes very good in the late game. And there was a guy on one of my videos yesterday that was sort of explaining why Damien's good, and I get why Damien's good. It's not that I don't think Damien is irreplaceable in like the Iron comp, for instance, or in PvP. I think there are, ways that you can play around not having Damien. But Damien is very important because essentially he cannot be killed. So ultimately, he will always be able to heal the team. And at Mythic Plus, you start that healing pretty much straight away. So that's why you get into Mythic Plus. You need to have exclusive weapon 5, but you just get him to Mythic Plus exclusive weapon 5, and he can start healing people pretty much out the get-go. The reason that Damien is good is because even if his summons get killed, he can just remake them, and then you have that healing ready to go, etc. He has a stun, which is very useful. It's a very long stun as well. So, like it can really take someone out of the fight for quite a while. And compared to things like Smokey and Mirky and Hewin, he can't be targeted directly. So he will remain there until the very end of the fight. He's always the last one to die for the most part, as long as he has a summon on the field. So that's why Damien's considered a very high tier healer. And yes, it is worth to get him to Mythic Plus. Faye, she is Atlanta tier. She's just a filler character. She doesn't do anything. She's kind of useless. There's probably some elements of Faye that are good, but she just doesn't. It's not used at all anywhere. All right, Granny Dani. Granny Dani is a unit that is pretty strong in progression, and she actually can be pretty good in the late game. Do you know what? I'm actually going to put her in generally strong. Granny Dani is generally strong. She's not the premier tank. That's Thorin. But she is a good substitute tank for Thorin if you don't have him at a high ascendancy. And she is generally a strong tank. If Thorin didn't exist, she would be the best tank, like single tank in the game. She's got great lockdown and great healing. She's got a really big self-heal as part of her ultimate. She's generally a strong character. Again, the problem is, though, like you're not probably going to have her on your Wilder wish list, but she's an S tier. You really want Iron on there, and a lot of people prefer Hewin because Hewin is in general a bit better and more flexible than running Granny Dani, and also because of the fact that Thorin is just better than Granny Dani. But she is generally strong, and I don't want to undersell her. Thorin's just better than her. The reason that Hewin isn't all the healers do different things, right? The closest that we've got for a competitor to Hewin is Smokey and Mirky, but they still do quite different stuff. Hewin is such a single target dedicated healer. I guess Damien's also a competitor to her, but Hewin has the best heals in the game, so that's why she is probably thought of more highly than Granny Dani. And speaking of Hewin, she is generally strong. You don't need Hewin to be Mythic Plus to be useful. Hewin can be useful at even just a single copy because her ultimate is extremely strong. She has the best map-wide healing in the game, which is the most important thing about Hewin in general. So I'm just gonna put her on there. All right, now Marilee. Marilee is super strong, but she does need to be Mythic Plus. And I'm going to caveat this because this is where this tier list kind of comes apart in terms of the way I present it. She is just a boss killer. She is a Dream Realm character. You are not going to be using Marilee outside of the Dream Realm realistically. But she is the best Dream Realm DPS carry in the game, and especially at Mythic Plus, because essentially from Mythic Plus onwards, she starts dealing true damage, which essentially ignores all of the enemy defenses, which just makes her incredibly valuable. The reason that it's not good outside of that situation is because she's so single target focused. And unlike Odie, who is also single target focused, she does not have an execute, so she can't burn through frontline carries and then move on to the next one and then move on to the next one. But she is the best single target DPS carry in the game. Speaking of Odie, I found this one quite hard because I always thought that Odie is quite generally strong. I think you can play Odie even before Mythic Plus in the Dream Realm, and you'll find that he's really good. But he does get infinitely better at Mythic Plus. So I realistically have to put him up here. In fact, I'm going to put him right at the top because I think he probably gets one of the best Mythic Plus upgrades in the game, which is essentially he gets an execute. And that execute is fantastic because not only does it execute a target, but if that target has an anti-death mechanic like Igor or Brutus, it ignores it. Straight up ignores it. They just die. It does not go through revive mechanics, but it does go through anti-death mechanics. And in my opinion, it's like this Odie is I credit Odie and Cessia, the two characters in the game that have hard carried me through pretty much all of my sort of progression so far. But I do think Odie is useful pre-Mythic Plus. I just think he gets infinitely better at Mythic Plus. Neru. Nero's going in the very situational camp because, and I'm going to put this with a big caveat, he is okay. The problem with Graveborn is they don't have a dedicated support. Nero is the only real support that Graveborn have got. He has one specific PvP comp that he is very good at Mythic Plus. I would put him strong but needs to be Mythic Plus, but that's a bit, I don't think, quite right, because ultimately you're not going to use Nero outside of this one comp. In general, when Nero gets to Mythic Plus, and my Nero actually is almost Mythic Plus, you can play him in a comp that uses Igor and Thorin, and essentially it stalls the game forever, because he places an immediate revive on Thorin or an immediate revive on Igor, and essentially it's very difficult to just kill things. So Nero, very specific, very situational, can be good, but is only in that one particular comp. Unless you're playing on a duel, Muriel is filler. She's not used. She's just too slow. Energy generation takes forever. Her ultimate isn't even that good. Lamont, also filler. Look, let's lie. Lamont's bad. I'm not even going to try and pretend he's good. He's filler. Which is weird, because he's an S tier, and I feel really bad. But then I suppose Atlanta is also an S tier. Speaking of Atlanta needs to go in Atlanta tier, because that's what the entire tier is named after. Carolina, also incredibly good. Gets very good at Mythic Plus, and is part of that Iron composition. So if you're wondering what the Iron composition is, it's Iron, Arden, Damien in Carolina, and then there is like one flexible additional slot there. I like to put Thorin in, but you could probably run a Rowan, for instance, if you want the extra energy generation, etc. But Thorin is also pretty good as kind of like a main tank in that comp to buy yourself some more time. Okay, what is this owl guy called? 1 second, guys. I can't even remember what this owl guy is called. All right, it's Khafra. Look, Khafra is, in my opinion, I think he's more useful than Atlanta tier. He's got quite a lot of utility in his kit. However, I do think he's quite situational. He's like a really big anti-healer. If the meta ever comes to a point where we need to focus a healer, stun them, stop them from healing, there are potentially some of those like mega stall healing comps in PvP where you could use Khafra. There's maybe a world where Khafra gets used. Otherwise, just not really, not really being used in any other situation, I don't think. I just don't feel like he's got the legs for it. But if we ever get a meta where we need to focus down a healer, Khafra's your man. He's got very good anti-healing stuff in his kit. Very specific anti-healing stuff in his kit. So, Kruger. What I'm going to say about Kruger is he is good, but he is situational. This is why he's going in the situational. I think he's better than all of these guys. He's basically just Dream Realm. It's hard because Marilee is also just Dream Realm, but she is very strong at Mythic Plus, whereas like Kruger is like you don't really need him at any specific tier, but he is only used in the Dream Realm. Like, and even then, he's not always used, but I feel like I need an extra tier here. I'm going to put good for progression because it's good for progression in the Dream Realm. That's what I'm putting Kruger in there for, right? He doesn't need to be Mythic Plus to shine. He definitely gets better the higher tier he gets. Mythic Plus makes him a much stronger tank. I can't put very situational because I feel bad putting him in the same tier as Khafra, so I'm going to go for good for progression. He's good for progression on the Dream Realm. That's kind of where he's being used the most. Igor, generally strong. Igor is, like all Graveborn S tier heroes, they are all generally pretty good. And Igor has a lot of potential, but mostly in PvP. However, he can be useful in a PvE setting as well. But mostly, he's like the FU Valor comp. I mean, I might even just show you. Let me see if I can show you. Here we go. Right. Let's challenge. Let's find someone that's more my level that I don't get absolutely blasted by. That guy's a little bit too low. This guy's similar to me. Lemon. Right. So there is a Valor there. He's also got a Rainier. So the Rainier is going to take my Rowan out of the picture, which is going to, obviously, he's trying to make it so that you focus one of those backline targets. But yeah, he's going to take my Rainier out of the picture for the time being. But I'm going to make sure that the Igor is my focus. But essentially, the whole point of this is FU Valor. And that's essentially what this does. So the Valor is going to get stuck on my Igor. My Valor is actually on the... Oh my god, my Igor actually just got one shot. That is very unusual. Did not expect that to happen, but there we go. We have a Cessia cast, so we're going to be okay. Usually, that's not what happens. Usually, my Igor does not get one shot. I'm going to try and play this again, because essentially, Igor is supposed to survive and keep Valor stuck for ages. I think we're okay. Yeah, he's dead. Right, we're going to try and do this again, because my Igor just, like, got absolutely one shot. Even though we won. Let's try one more time. Right. Bears. This guy sounds about my level. Okay, here we go. Right. Here is the enemy Valor targeting my Igor. As you can see, I can't target anything but his Lucius, but that's perfectly fine. Boom. So Igor is going to get focused by Valor, right? As soon as we get a gravestone, Igor will just continuously jump to gravestones. And you know, obviously my Valor has already got the kill, and she's already got her massive haste and attack speed bonus. His Valor got stuck on my Igor for the whole fight. That's basically what we use Igor for. And because Valor is so popular in PvP, it's kind of a good thing. So yeah, there we go. That is why we use Igor. He's very good in that sense. Obviously situationally useful, but he is also just generally quite a useful hero, and you can play him in other scenarios too. Lucius. So I'm putting Lucius in good for progression, even though he's kind of just also okay. What I'd say about Lucius is that he makes a very solid off tank for second AFK stage progression teams. But also, like, I see quite a lot of him in PvP as well. Like, a lot of people do rate Lucius at the higher end of PvP. Sorry, Slack notifications coming up. So yeah, look, I think, like, Lucius is pretty good for progression. Do not invest a huge amount into him, honestly. There are some people that have got Lucius to, like, Mythic Plus tier, and he is solid. But he's never going to be your main tank unless you're running a kind of PvP comp where you're having more light bearers in. Sorry, guys, just have to pause Slack notifications. I'm sure that's extremely annoying for those of you that have Slack and you're like, where's my work notifications? And it was actually just mine. Okay, Brutus, good for progression. He is one of those characters, and I'm going to do a double whammy here. I'm going to do Antandra and Brutus at the same time. They are both characters that are very good for progression, that don't need a lot of resources invested in them to help you. Brutus is a one-copy wonder. You're only really picking him up for his invulnerability. It doesn't matter whether you get him to Epic or Legendary Plus or Mythic. Like, he's there designed to take the initial brunt of damage and then get his invulnerability shield for a long period of time. Antandra is that follow-up off-tank. What I would say about Antandra is that she kind of fills a similar role to Lucius, but just does it better. She is designed to support another tank. She's not really ever going to be your main tank, despite her Legendary Plus upgrade granting her in-battle HP, which is actually really strong. I use her alongside Thorin as my Thorin off-tank, so when Thorin passes on the Iron Wall buff to Antandra, when he dies for the first time, Antandra has a big HP pool, gets a massive boost of resistances, and actually can tank for a very long period of time. I used Thorin and Antandra to take me from, like, AFK stage 700, maybe before that, to AFK stage 1125. And I'm probably going to use them at the start of the Abyssal Tower as well. So, yes, Antandra, very strong, and I personally think getting her to at least Legendary Plus is worth it as a strong off-tank. However, if you talk to people who are kind of more min-maxing, then they would say don't, because it's not worth it. You're not going to use her later, which is very fair. But realistically, like, getting upgrades on Antandra is going to help you in the Mauler Tower regardless. She's a good tank for the Mauler Tower as well. But yeah, I'm personally a big fan of her. I think she's very good as an off tank. I know that she's not going to be strong the later we go into the game. That's probably why now that she's at Legendary Plus, I'm not going to, or she's actually a Mythic for me, but I'm not actually going to invest that much more into her. And I'm now going to sort of pivot over towards making just sort of Coco is there. But I might as well keep Antandra on my wish list because Odie is already Mythic Plus. So Antandra goes on my wish list. If you're going to be min-maxing, you put Coco and Odie on your wish list. And if one of them hits Supreme Plus, like my Odie has, then you just put Antandra on. She's the next best one to put on. You could also put Kruger, I guess, if you wanted to get copies for Kruger for the Dream Realm. People will probably say that's better because Kruger has much more utility as the game progresses all the way through. Always going to be a good boss DPS or a boss debuffer. So yeah, I guess there's that discussion there. Look, I just like Antandra. I think she's great, and I think for free-to-play players, if you can get her to like Legendary Plus at least, she's going to help you progress whilst you're spending time gathering resources for more pulls, etc. Okay, Brian. When the last time I did this tier list, I did the Mythic Plus tier list. I said don't bother on Brian, and a commenter came and said, "Hey, look, actually, I think you've been harsh on Brian here. He's actually really good." And I, be honest with you, don't know enough about Brian and haven't played Brian enough to really have an opinion. But after doing some research, it looks like Brian has got some really strong potential, especially as another anti-Valor. Now, what I would say about Brian is that realistically, Igor's doing the same thing, but he deals way more damage than Igor in general, especially if you can get him to Mythic Plus. So there is definitely place for him. I think he potentially is a slept-on character. I think he could be extremely strong and probably have some sort of big PvP comps that can be worked around him as well. So I think Brian has got some places. I think he's a bit slept on. And we'll have to see whether he gets picked up as the time goes on. Coco. She's generally pretty strong, actually. Coco is... You're never going to have a problem slotting Coco into one of your compositions. She is really good for damage reduction to the team. She has got a really good buff for the team. And when you get into Mythic Plus, she provides quite a large shield for the team as well. So, yeah, I think generally Coco's pretty strong. She's a bit of a one-copy wonder. You don't need Coco at any particular ascendancy to really make use of her abilities. It's much more her ultimate that's the most useful thing about her. But she's generally a really strong character and is obviously part of a lot of core progression teams that we have. Okay, next one is Corin. He is another character that at Mythic Plus becomes a bit of a beast. Again, much more focused on Dream Realm. However, what I would say about Corin is I like him more than Marilee because he can at least be kind of like a frontliner. He's got a lot of self-sustain. He can be annoying to deal with. I have used Corin in some of my progression fights. Not many, but I have used Corin in some of my progression fights. I find him to be a bit more transferable than Marilee, but he's also not as strong single target as Marilee is. I mean, Marilee and Odie tend to do more damage than Corin, but Corin fulfills this niche that a lot of Dream Realm bosses require someone in melee range, or even Primal Lord bosses like the Bear boss requires someone in melee range, and Corin has got a lot of self-sustain and deals a lot of damage, especially when you get him to Mythic Plus. So he's also another good option in this case. And becomes a bit of a beast at that level too. So that's why he's going to go up there. It's really hard for me to rate Temezia because she is strong. Temezia's disruption is super strong, but not many people use her. And it's difficult to say, you probably would never really... She's never really going to be used that much in PvE because... there are just better ways. If you want disruption, you just run the Iron composition. You don't need Temezia to do that. And that's one of the things that is difficult. I feel like Temezia has to go in the okay category because she is as a standalone really good for disruption on the backline. It's difficult. It's not even she's situational because you can kind of run her in any comp if you want to. She's always going to be useful in that sense. But I can't honestly say yes, she's super strong because frankly she kind of just is okay. She is just okay. I think when you get Temezia, I'm gonna have a look now. I haven't even really had a look at Temezia at the high levels. I don't have Temezia at a very high level at all. So Yeah, I mean, essentially, she becomes quite strong at Mythic Plus, especially if you get her exclusive weapon quite high, because she becomes like she's got a bit of self-sustain. And at Supreme Plus, she reduces the enemy's physical defense, which only by a small amount, but it's pretty decent. Do you know what? Let's move her to generally. I feel like I need I feel like I need a tier for Temezia that's just like better than okay, but not amazing. I don't know. What do I do about Temezia, guys? I think it's unfair to put her in the same as Leica. I'm gonna put her in generally strong because she is a strong hero. It's just that there's not much use for her. Like, you wouldn't put her into many comps, but as an individual hero, she's quite good. And backline disruption is always really nice. And when you get the self-sustain from her Mythic Plus upgrades, she can be really good in that regard. I think Temezia's got legs. I'm going to put her at the bottom of generally strong. But hear me out. I didn't. If you're watching it, I don't really know where I want to put Temezia. She's a hard one to fit in. Citrana is not garbage, but she's not great. She has some places in like Mauler comps, but we're going to put her in the okay category. She is just okay. She's like Leica. She's okay. Same as Seth. He's kind of okay. Just, again, another character that is okay, does a particular role quite well, but ultimately doesn't really have a great spot in many comps. I am going to put Reese in Slept On. I think Reese's damage is very good. And in general, I think I know a lot of people are big Reese enjoyers. I think he is a bit slept on. I think there is definitely worlds where Reese can be used. I think we just haven't had, A, the right heroes released yet, or B, people kind of like worked out a comp that really suits him. But I think eventually, you Reese enjoyers, you will get your comeuppance when there is, comeuppance sounds wrong. Like, comeuppance is like, you guys are going to get proven wrong. You will get your moment in the spotlight. When there is maybe a comp that works for Reese, I think as an individual hero, he's strong and his DPS output is high. So that's why I'm putting him in the slept on category. Okay, so Scarlita, she is another Mythic Plus wonder child. Generally, the execute that you get from Mythic Plus is very strong for Scarlita. She is, like another one of those characters that becomes super strong once you get to that level, but otherwise is maybe not so strong at that point. Basically deals true damage if there are at least 4 surviving non-summoned allies other than herself on the battlefield. So essentially you need your entire team to survive for her Divine Wrath to work. Legendary Plus is also good because she has the execution range increase as well. But yeah, generally Scarlita kind of needs to be at that Mythic Plus level to be really shining. Rainier. He is like the king of generally strong Hypergeans. He's a pretty good at one copy. Gets significantly better like the more copies you get of him. Specifically for Rainier, it's his Mythic Plus, where I think it's the essentially he reduces the switched allies position by 25% and increases damage increases damage taken by 25% overall, which is just really good in general. So it's like a damage buff for your entire team on a particular target. Obviously becomes very strong on Dream Realm bosses, for instance, as well. But Rainier is just generally also a pretty strong character that has utility. What is this guy? What is this guy called? Guys, I can't remember I never remember what this guy's called. This dude. Salazar. There you go. Salazar. He's filler tier. He's filler tier. So Clarissa, is that her name? Some of these I just don't remember the name of. Parisa. She's good at Mythic Plus specifically. She gets very strong. She can be used as a substitute for Carolina in the Iron composition, technically. Synergizes really well with Iron because everyone gets grouped up and takes a load of AoE damage. So yeah, Parissa is very good at Mythic Plus as well. Not generally strong. You need to invest in her to become really good. But I see a lot of people that use Parissa at like Supreme and Mythic Plus levels at like very high progression levels in the Abyssal Tower. So she has got a lot of potential. She's also very good at boosting your allies' damage output. So Parissa can work really nicely alongside Florabelle as well. Shakir. Shakir's a bit slept on in the sense that, yes, people know there's utility of Shakir. Shakir has got some some strong use in a anti-Iron PvP composition, but it's do you know what? Shakir's a bit like Temezia. I think like he's not slept on. People know the strength of Shakir, but it's just about that he's not used as much as he maybe could be. But as a character, as an individual, just generally strong, and can be used at various stages of the game depending on how your progression levels are. And I think works pretty well in that regard. I think Shakir is a generally strong character, but ultimately really only useful at the high levels when you're going up against Iron compositions, and there's kind of like an anti-Iron comp, Mauler comp, where Shakir is pretty useful in it. I'm gonna put Sylvina in the generally strong as well. She is generally strong with the caveat of being PvP focused, but can have use in PvE as well, but gets very good at Mythic Plus. Do you know what? Actually, she's kind of a Mythic Plus person. I'm gonna have to move this down now, aren't I? Bloody hell. She's a Mythic Plus person as well. In the sense that, you know, I wouldn't go around like intending to use her, but if you were looking to have like you'd put her on your A tier for Graveborn. You know, like Graveborn A tiers are all pretty weak. So Sylvina is a good Graveborn A tier, and just if you passively level up to Mythic Plus, you'll find use for her in PvP in a lot of situations. Thorin, generally strong. Doesn't need to be Mythic Plus, but Mythic Plus certainly increases that strength. He is just a generally strong super giga tank, best tank in the game. One of the best characters in the game in general, and I think, you know, if you're able to unlock Thorin and make him part of your comps, you will be very happy. Thorin is fantastic. Need I say more? He's just the best tank in the game. This guy, Walker, terrible. Viperium. Okay. Right. So, I previously said in a video just 2 days ago that Viperion wasn't that good. And then I proceeded to go into high-level PvP, and someone played a Mythic Plus Viperion with Hewin, with Rowan, and Thorin as the main tank, and then someone else. I can't remember who that someone else was. And I got one-shot by Viperion. So, for that chap that got very angry at me for telling you to invest in Viperion, don't worry, because in PvP, I got absolutely slapped by a Viperion. Now, what I will say is this comp, Viperion will suck versus the traditional Iron composition, because he's never going to cast his ultimate. It takes forever for him to cast his ultimate. But there is use for him. You can build comps around him, and generally, I think could be very good if they delete Iron from the game. Okay, I'm moving him out of Slept On. He's going into very situational. Yeah, he has that one comp that he's got that's going for him, but it's just not very good into... It's very good into Valor, because Valor's quite a slow comp a lot of the time. So if you're able to kind of like sustain past Valor, which you can with double healer, then yeah, I think there's great use for him. But other than that, he's going in my very situational tier. Not bad, but has a situational comp. Valor, another queen of Mythic Pluses. She is very strong, but needs to be Mythic Plus. Do you know what? No, do you know what? She doesn't need to be Mythic Plus. She gets a lot better at Mythic Plus, but she is quite generally strong. You can use Valor pre-Mythic Plus, and you will find a use for her. She's a great backline assassinator. It's just that at Mythic Plus, she becomes so much better. She's not really a one-copy wonder. She is, I think, a generally strong character, but I'm changing my mind. No, she does need to be Mythic Plus. I think like you can use her in the early game, pre-Mythic Plus, but realistically, if you want to make use of her down the line, you need a Mythic Plus. If you didn't pull her from her banner, she would be going on my Lightbearer wish list for sure. Valen. He's filler tier. He's very good in the early game story, and he will carry you through a lot of fights, but then just isn't worth it. Smokey Amirki. Generally strong. Has a very good Mythic Plus upgrade, like decent. It's not the best in the world. It's good for Dream Realm and boss damage, primarily. But it's just a generally strong healer. You know, between him and Hewin, they are the best healers in the game. So, I think it's worth it to say that Smokey and Mickey is just a generally strong character. And then we have Florabelle, and this is an interesting one because it's difficult to really know. Like, there are some people in my guild that have been showing me like the damage that Florabelle does when you max her out, and she's clearly extremely good. And I don't think she necessarily needs to be Mythic Plus to be super strong. I think her being Mythic Plus definitely helps. If for those of you that don't have the context, at Mythic Plus, she grants shields to allies that get summoned. There's been this new comp that people have been talking about where you use Burial, and Burial then summons all of his clones. I think, like, to really make her useful, she does need to be Mythic Plus. But she is quite a strong character, and I think people are starting to make use of her in comps in the late game. So we're going to put her in the strong but needs to be Mythic Plus category. But I do think she is just generally quite a strong character. But I would say that pre-Mythic Plus, Cessia is going to be your better summoner. And then post-Mythic Plus, Florabelle probably comes a little bit more alive in the late game. I think she's got better scaling than Cessia in general. Like, Cessia's Mythic Weapon scaling doesn't really do much, whereas Florabelle's Mythic Weapon scaling is very strong. Especially Mythic Weapon plus 10. That's, like, super good. So, that is my tier list. Very top-heavy, but there are just a lot of really good characters that are good when you get them to Mythic Plus. And hopefully that helps you. I didn't put as many in the okay category as I thought I would do. But there is a lot of good and strong heroes. This is it. I'm happy with this tier list. Let's ship it. It's shipped. It's going. It's shipped. See you soon.